Rome, 37 AD. The empire stretches from Britain to the deserts of Syria. Legions guard the frontiers, senators whisper in marble halls, and in a palace thick with paranoia, a child is born into one of the most dangerous families on earth. His name, Nero, or at least that's the name history remembers. He is born Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus, a name that carries weight, arrogance, and blood. Nero is born into the Julio-Claudian dynasty, a family where power is inherited, but survival is not guaranteed. His father, Gnaeus Domitius Ahenobarbus, is cruel, arrogant, and reportedly violent. Ancient historians describe him as a man capable of anything. When Nero is just a toddler, his father dies, leaving him vulnerable in a political world that devours the weak. But Nero's true inheritance isn't his father, it's his mother. Agrippina the Younger is not simply ambitious. She is strategic, cold, patient. She didn't learn about power from stories. She was born inside it. She's the great-granddaughter of Augustus, the man that turned the Roman Republic into the Roman Empire, great niece of Emperor Tiberius, the sister of Emperor Caligula, the niece of Emperor Claudius. And she understands something better than most Roman men. Power in Rome is not seized with swords. It is secured through bloodlines. But she watched power rot from the inside. Her brother, Caligula, began as Rome's golden prince and ended as a tyrant butchered by his own guards. When her brother Caligula is assassinated, Rome spirals into chaos. Claudius, awkward, stammering, underestimated, becomes emperor. Once in power, he proves surprisingly competent. Agrippina sees this and learns power doesn't always go to the strongest. It goes to the most positioned. She saw how emperors were made. She saw how emperors were killed. Then Agrippina saw opportunity. In 49 AD, Agrippina does something that even hardened Roman elites find disturbing. She marries her uncle, Claudius. Officially, it is presented as a marriage of stability, a strengthening of the imperial house. But the political implications were unmistakable. Claudius already has a son, Britannicus, the legitimate heir to the throne. By entering the marriage, Agrippina moved herself, and Lucius, to the center of power. And from this moment forward, every decision she makes points in one direction: secure Lucius's future, eliminate every obstacle. Agrippina's strategy unfolds methodically. She works to marginalize rivals within the court. Some are reassigned, others quietly disappear from influence. Key administrative and military positions begin to fill with figures aligned with her interests. Influence in Rome rarely announces itself. It accumulates. At the same time, Nero's public profile expands. The turning point comes when Claudius formally adopts him. Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus becomes Nero. Claudius Caesar, Drusus Germanicus, a name carefully constructed. Claudius ties him directly to the reigning emperor. Caesar invokes the founding myth of imperial power. Germanicus connects him to a beloved military legacy. In Rome, names were political instruments. This one signaled continuity. Soon after, he is betrothed to Claudius's daughter, Octavia, further binding him to the imperial household. His education is entrusted to respected figures, most notably the Stoic philosopher Seneca, a choice that lends intellectual legitimacy to his grooming. Coins are minted with his face beside the emperor's. In the ancient world, coinage functioned as mass communication. Every transaction reinforced a message. This young man stands next to power. At just 13 years old, Nero is no longer a child. He is a brand. 54 AD. Claudius dies unexpectedly after a banquet in which mushrooms, a dish he was particularly fond of, were served. Officially, his death is attributed to natural causes. He was in his 60s, not in perfect health, and Roman medicine offered little clarity in such matters. But almost immediately, rumors begin to circulate. Several ancient historians, writing decades later, suggest the possibility of poison. Some imply Agrippina may have arranged it. Others claim a physician intervened to ensure the emperor did not recover once symptoms began. What is certain is this: there was no formal investigation, no public inquiry, no legal reckoning. The transition of power moved with remarkable speed. Britannicus, still a boy, was quietly set aside. Nero, older and already positioned as co-heir through adoption, was presented to the Praetorian Guard. Their support was decisive. The Praetorian Guard declares Nero emperor. The Senate ratified the decision soon after. The machinery of empire did not pause to debate suspicion. Stability mattered more than certainty. Within hours, Rome had a new ruler. He was 16 years old. And whether or not he understood the full circumstances of Claudius's death, one fact would follow him for the rest of his reign. He ascended the throne under a cloud of rumor, not proof, but perception. And in imperial Rome, perception could be as powerful as truth. While modern 16-year-olds worry about school and status, Nero now controls 50 to 60 million people, the largest military force on Earth, the wealth of 3 continents, and standing behind him, not beside him, is Agrippina. For now, Rome believes it has entered a golden age. Nero appears generous, approachable, artistic, different, but power given too young, under the shadow of manipulation and murder, does not create stability. It creates something far more volatile. At 16, Nero does not rule alone. Behind him stand 2 stabilizing forces: Seneca, philosopher, playwright, Stoic thinker; Sextus Afranius Burrus, commander of the Praetorian Guard, disciplined and pragmatic. Together, they form a quiet regency. Seneca shapes Nero's image, preaching moderation, clemency, and restraint. Burrus ensures the army remains loyal and the palace remains stable. For a moment, Rome believes the nightmare cycles of Caligula and court conspiracies are over. Historians would later call this period the Quinquennium Neronis, the 5 good years. And surprisingly, they may have been right. Under Nero's early reign, taxes are reduced, corrupt governors are prosecuted, excessive trials for treason decline, gladiatorial games and public spectacles increase. He appears generous, youthful, charismatic. When he addresses the Senate, he promises to rule with their counsel. When he appears in public, crowds cheer, and that cheering matters. Because Nero does something unusual for a Roman emperor. He makes himself visible. He walks among the people more often. He engages. He smiles. He allows himself to be seen not only as a ruler, but as a personality. Nero is accessible in a way previous emperors were not. But here is the quiet truth. Nero is bored. Behind the marble walls of the Palatine Hill, while senators debate tax reforms and generals discuss troop movements in Britannia, Nero drifts. He listens, but he does not care. Administrative reports bore him. Legal disputes exhaust him. Military briefings feel like noise. To him, Rome feels old, heavy, repetitive. He loves something else: music, poetry, theater. He practices the lyre for hours, fingers blistered, posture corrected, voice trained. He studies rhythm and breath control. He works with vocal instructors the way a gladiator works with a weapons master. In private, he does not dream of conquest. He dreams of applause. In Roman culture, elite men do not perform on stage. Actors are of low status. Professional performers are often slaves or freedmen. Public artistic display by a senator. Embarrassing. By an emperor. Unthinkable. But Nero begins to blur the line. At first it is harmless. Private recitals, small audiences of trusted friends, late-night performances inside the palace. Then competitively, whispers spread through the Senate. Is this refinement or humiliation? The people, however, are fascinated. An emperor who sings, an emperor who competes, an emperor who wants to be loved, not feared. It feels revolutionary. From 54 to 59 AD, Rome experiences relative calm. The empire expands in Armenia. The economy remains steady. Public works continue. Agrippina's influence begins to fade as Nero asserts independence. Seneca's philosophical restraint tempers youthful impulses. Burrus keeps the guard disciplined. For 5 years, the machine holds. But by 58 to 59 AD, tension builds, because Nero does not want to be a puppet. He does not want to be controlled by his mother. He does not want to be remembered as the boy guided by wiser men. Nero is growing into himself, and he doesn't want to be managed. He wants to be admired, not as emperor, as an artist. At first, Agrippina sits beside Nero at official events. She attempts to receive foreign envoys with him. She appears on coins. She listens in on Senate meetings. For Rome, this is unsettling. A woman, visibly, exercising imperial authority. Nero begins removing her from ceremonies. He denies her access to certain audiences. He relocates her from the palace. He takes a mistress, Poppaea Sabina, someone Agrippina despises. The power struggle becomes visible, and visible power struggles in Rome are dangerous. In 55 AD, Claudius's biological son, Britannicus, dies suddenly during a banquet. Ancient sources claim poison. Most fingers point toward Nero. Whether true or not, the message is clear. Rivals disappear. Agrippina now understands something chilling. She created an emperor, but she no longer controls him, and she may be expendable. By 59 AD, the relationship between Nero and his mother had deteriorated beyond repair. According to the ancient historians Tacitus and Suetonius, Nero did not initially jump straight to open violence. He tried subtlety first. Poison was the standard political solution in imperial Rome. It was quiet, deniable, and common. Nero reportedly consulted Locusta, a professional poisoner he had previously used in the death of Britannicus. She specialized in fast-acting toxins derived from plants and possibly arsenic compounds. But Agrippina was not naive. Ancient accounts claim she used food tasters, ate cautiously at imperial banquets, even reportedly took antidotes regularly. Whether exaggerated or not, the point stands. She was prepared for this game. Poison either failed or was deemed too unreliable. Then comes something almost theatrical, a boat designed to collapse at sea. The plans weren't Nero's personal craftsmanship. It was engineered. Tacitus names a key figure, Anicetus, commander of the fleet stationed at Misenum. Anicetus had once been Nero's tutor and was fiercely loyal to him. Agrippina is invited to a festival at Baiae, the luxurious resort town along the Bay of Naples, and was also a naval hub. Ships were readily available. Accidents at sea were believable. Anicetus allegedly supervised the construction of a specially modified vessel designed to kill without obvious signs of murder. The ship was designed with a collapsible roof or canopy section above where Agrippina would recline during the voyage. The idea: weighted panels were rigged to fall inward. The collapse would crush her. The ship itself was built to partially disassemble. Nero invited Agrippina to a festival honoring Minerva. He treated her warmly, publicly reconciled, dinner, laughter, appearances. It was calculated. If she died after a loving reunion, suspicion would fade. At night, Agrippina boarded the ship to return home. She reclined beneath the rigged canopy. The mechanism triggered. The canopy collapsed, but not as planned. It crushed one of her attendants instead. The ship began to come apart, but not quickly enough. Agrippina reportedly realized what was happening almost immediately. Instead of panicking, she stayed silent. When debris fell, she did not cry out as Agrippina. One of her attendants shouted that she was Agrippina, and was beaten to death by sailors who believed they had found their target. Agrippina, meanwhile, slipped into the dark water. She swam, in heavy clothing, at night, across part of the bay. Eventually, fishermen rescued her and brought her to shore. Imagine the tension. A mother realizing her son just tried to assassinate her. Nero waits for confirmation. A messenger arrives. She survived. Now the problem is worse. If Agrippina returns to Rome and publicly accuses the emperor of attempted murder, Nero's legitimacy collapses. The Senate could turn. The guard could hesitate. There is no room left for subtlety. So he makes the decision. Nero panics. He summons Anicetus again. This time no theatrics, no mechanisms, No staged accidents. Anicetus gathers a small armed detachment, likely naval officers and loyal soldiers rather than a full Praetorian unit. They sail to her villa near Baiae under cover of night. Tacitus describes Agrippina lying on a couch when the men enter. A lamp burns. The room is dim. She is not caught entirely unaware. Anicetus enters first. With him are a naval officer named Herculius and a centurion, traditionally identified as Oberitus in later sources. The mood is not chaotic. It is heavy. The first blow is said to have been delivered with a club, possibly a heavy staff or cudgel used by sailors. Herculius reportedly strikes her on the head. She does not die immediately. She collapses but remains conscious. The centurion steps forward to stab her with a gladius, a short stabbing sword designed for close combat, but he hesitates. This is not a battlefield enemy. This is the emperor's mother. That is when Agrippina allegedly speaks. She bares her abdomen, exposing the place that carried Nero, and says, "Strike my womb," a line heavy with symbolism. The womb that bore an emperor, the womb that shaped destiny. The centurion thrusts the gladius into her body. She dies there, in her villa, by military blade. Anicetus does not linger. The body is reportedly hastily cremated, not with grand imperial ceremony, but with minimal rites. Nero moves quickly to control the narrative. He claims Agrippina plotted against him. He claims she was about to accuse him falsely. He claims he acted in self-defense for the good of Rome. The Senate, either fearful or complicit, congratulates him. But something shifts. Even if the public accepts the story, Nero knows what he has done. In Roman culture, matricide was among the gravest moral violations imaginable. From this point forward, restraint begins to erode, and the emperor who once promised moderation begins his transformation into legend and infamy. In 66 to 67 AD, Nero takes his obsession with performing even further. He leaves Rome entirely. Instead of inspecting armies or provinces, he tours Greece, competing in the great cultural festivals of the Greek world. Among them, the Olympic Games, the Pythian Games at Delphi, the Nemean Games, the Isthmian Games. These festivals normally occurred on a rotating schedule over several years, but Nero orders many of them to be held in the same year so he can compete in all of them during one grand artistic tour. It becomes the largest imperial performance tour in Roman history. At the Olympic Games, Nero insists on competing in chariot racing. He enters a race with 10 horses, something highly unusual. During the race, he reportedly falls from the chariot. Under normal circumstances, a fallen racer would lose. Despite this, the judges awarded him first place. Official reasoning: they claimed Nero would have won if he had completed the race. Reality: no judge wanted to deny the emperor victory. To Nero, these victories prove something. Rome simply doesn't understand him. The Roman elite values discipline, conquest, and tradition, but Nero believes the future belongs to culture, to music, to performance. He sees himself as a new kind of ruler, one who will elevate art across the empire, but the more he performs, the more uncomfortable Rome becomes. Common people sometimes enjoy the spectacle, but senators and generals grow increasingly uneasy, because what they are witnessing is not the behavior of a Roman ruler. A Roman emperor is supposed to command armies, preside over law, protect the dignity of the state. But their emperor stands on stage beneath theater lights. He sings, he recites poetry. He travels across Greece chasing crowns meant for actors and musicians. The Roman elite, it feels less like leadership and more like humiliation. And slowly, quietly, a dangerous thought begins to circulate through the empire. If Nero would rather be celebrated as an artist than feared as an emperor, then who exactly is ruling Rome? And how long can an empire survive while its ruler searches for applause? July 64 AD. The summer air is hot. The city is packed. Wooden apartments lean against narrow streets like stacked tinder. Then sometime in the night, a fire begins. Ancient sources place the origin of the fire in the merchant stalls along the southeastern side of the Circus Maximus, a massive chariot racing stadium surrounded by tightly packed shops selling oils, cloth, wood, and other flammable goods. The conditions were perfect for disaster. Rome at this time was a city of narrow alleyways, wooden buildings, overcrowded apartment blocks called insulae, open flames used for cooking and lighting. Once the fire ignites, strong winds begin pushing it through the valley between the Palatine and Caelian hills. Within hours, flames leap from building to building. Panic spreads faster than the fire. People flee through narrow streets, many of which are already burning. Falling debris blocks escape routes. Crowds crush together in desperation. Some citizens try to save possessions, others abandon everything. Tacitus describes terrifying scenes. Families separated in the smoke, elderly people unable to run, children lost in chaos, citizens throwing belongings into the Tiber River, entire neighborhoods collapse into flame. The fire rages for 6 days and 7 nights. Roman firefighting crews, the vigils, try desperately to create fire breaks by tearing down buildings, but the flames keep spreading. By the time the fire finally slows, 10 of Rome's 14 districts are damaged. 3 are completely destroyed. Large portions of the capital are simply gone. At the time the fire began, Nero was not even in the city. According to the historian Tacitus, he was staying in Antium, his coastal villa about 35 miles away. When word reaches him, Nero reportedly returns quickly to Rome. Some accounts claim he organizes relief efforts, opening the Campus Martius and public gardens for refugees, arranging emergency food supplies, lowering grain prices to prevent starvation. But disasters do not only produce destruction, they produce rumors, and rumors spread faster than fire. Almost immediately, whispers begin circulating through the burned streets. Some claim Nero wanted to rebuild Rome in a grander style. Others say imperial agents were seen preventing citizens from extinguishing flames. And then the most famous rumor of all emerges, that Nero stood on a tower, watching the city burn, while singing about the fall of Troy. Later, storytellers simplify the image into something unforgettable, Nero playing music while Rome burned. It becomes one of history's most famous accusations. These rumors were never fully confirmed. Some sources written decades later repeat it as fact. But either way, Nero's reputation was already collapsing. Whether Nero caused the fire or not may never be known. But what matters is what people believe. Rome has just experienced one of the worst disasters in its history. Homes are gone, families are dead, entire neighborhoods are ash. The emperor already has a reputation for theatrical spectacle. For many Romans, the story simply feels true, even if it isn't. After the fire, Nero announces a massive rebuilding project. The new city will feature wider streets, brick construction instead of wood, height limits on buildings, fire safety measures. But one part of the plan enrages people. At the center of the burned city, Nero begins constructing an enormous imperial palace, the Domus Aurea, the Golden House. A sprawling complex with artificial lakes, gardens, and a colossal statue of Nero himself. To many Romans, it looks like the emperor has turned their tragedy to his personal playground. And to silence rumors about the fire, Nero needed someone else to blame. He finds a small, unpopular religious group in Rome, a group few Romans understand, Christians. And what happens next becomes one of the most infamous persecutions in ancient history. At this time, Christians are not yet a major religion. They are a tiny group within the empire, followers of a man executed decades earlier under Pontius Pilate. To most Romans, they are strange and unsettling. They refuse to worship Roman gods. They refuse to sacrifice to the emperor. They gather in private meetings. Rumors circulate that they practice secret rituals and strange ceremonies. Roman society already distrusts them. That makes them the perfect scapegoat. According to the historian Tacitus, Nero begins by arresting individuals who openly confess to being Christians. But the crackdown quickly expands. Those arrested are pressured to name others. Soon, large numbers are detained, not necessarily because of evidence related to the fire, but simply because they belong to the sect. Tacitus describes the charges against them as hatred of humanity, a vague accusation that allows the state to treat them as enemies of society. The trials are swift, the punishments are theatrical. Executions take place not quietly but publicly, often as part of grand spectacles designed to entertain crowds. Some Christians are crucified, a brutal Roman execution normally reserved for slaves and rebels. Others are reportedly sewn into animal skins and torn apart by dogs in staged hunts. But the most infamous punishment happens at night, in Nero's private gardens. Tacitus describes one of the most horrifying scenes of the persecutions. Condemned Christians are coated in pitch or oil, then they are tied to wooden stakes. When night falls, they are set on fire. Their burning bodies illuminate Nero's gardens, turning executions into living torches. Ironically, the cruelty of these punishments begins to produce the opposite effect Nero intended. Even Romans who dislike Christians begin to feel uncomfortable. Tacitus himself writes that the victims appeared less like criminals and more like people being sacrificed to satisfy the cruelty of one man. Persecutions may silence rumors temporarily, but they do not restore Nero's reputation. Instead, they deepen the sense that something about his rule has become darker. By the early 60s AD, the empire that once welcomed Nero's rule is beginning to change, not because of one single disaster, but because a pattern is emerging. Executions, extravagance, fear. The young emperor who once ruled under the careful guidance of advisors now governs almost entirely alone, and Rome is beginning to feel the consequences. The Domus Aurea, the Golden House. This is not simply a palace, it is an imperial landscape. Ancient sources describe a sprawling complex covering huge portions of central Rome, including artificial lakes, miles of landscaped gardens, gold-plated halls and marble pavilions, a dining room whose ceiling reportedly rotated to mimic the motion of the heavens, and a colossal bronze statue of Nero himself nearly 100 feet tall. To fund projects like this, along with Nero's expensive artistic tours and spectacles, enormous sums of money are required. Taxes begin rising across the provinces. Confiscations of wealthy estates become more common. For provincial elites and Roman aristocrats alike, a dangerous fear spreads. When emperors start seizing property, no fortune is safe. Even before the fire, Nero had already begun eliminating people connected to his rise. His first wife, Claudia Octavia, had been the daughter of Emperor Claudius and a symbol of stability in the imperial family. Their marriage had never been affectionate. And by 62 AD, Nero has become completely captivated by another woman, Poppaea Sabina, beautiful, ambitious, and determined to become empress. Poppaea pushes Nero toward a decision that shocks Rome. Nero divorces Octavia, claiming she is infertile. Just 12 days later, he marries Poppaea. The reaction in Rome is explosive. Octavia had been popular with the people. Crowds fill the streets in protest. Statues of Octavia are carried through the city in demonstrations of support. Meanwhile, statues of Poppaea are torn down and smashed. For Nero, the unrest is dangerous. An emperor cannot allow sympathy for a potential rival, even one who had once been his own wife. So Nero escalates. Octavia is suddenly accused of adultery. The charge is almost certainly fabricated. A man is forced to confess to an affair with her, giving Nero the legal justification he needs. Octavia is exiled to the remote island of Pandataria, a bleak place long used for imprisoning unwanted members of the imperial family. But exile isn't enough. Soon after her arrival, Nero gives the order. Octavia must die. According to ancient historians, soldiers open her veins to stage the execution as a suicide. When she does not die quickly enough, executioners finish the job inside a hot steam bath. She is around 22 years old. Some accounts claim her severed head is later sent to Poppaea as proof that the former empress is truly gone. And for many Romans, the murder of Octavia crosses a moral line. The climate of fear deepens a few years later. In 65 AD, a large conspiracy forms among senators, officers, and elites. It becomes known as the Pisonian Conspiracy. Its goal: assassinate Nero and replace him with another leader. The plot is discovered before it can be carried out. Nero's response is ruthless. Executions sweep through Rome. Dozens of prominent figures are accused of involvement. Among them is Nero's former teacher and advisor, Seneca. Seneca may not have been directly involved, but his influence over Nero in earlier years makes him dangerous. In Roman tradition, elite executions often take the form of forced suicide. Seneca receives the order. He calmly opens his veins in a bath while discussing philosophy with friends as he slowly bleeds to death. The man who once helped guide Nero's reign dies by Nero's command. From this moment forward, fear dominates the imperial court. Even Nero's second marriage eventually ends in tragedy. Poppaea Sabina becomes empress and for a time appears to have strong influence over Nero, but their relationship is volatile. Ancient sources, though historians debate the exact truth, record a disturbing story. During an argument while she is pregnant, Nero reportedly kicks Poppaea in a fit of rage. The injuries kill her. Whether the account is literal or exaggerated by hostile historians, the story spreads across the empire. By now, Nero's reputation has become monstrous. By the late 60s AD, Nero's Rome is quiet. Too quiet. Allies have been executed. Senators avoid attracting attention. Aristocrats fear confiscation. And while the capital remains under control, the real danger is forming far from Rome, in the provinces. In 68 AD, the fragile balance holding Nero's rule together finally breaks. The first spark appears in Gaul. A provincial governor named Gaius Julius Vindex openly revolts against Nero's rule. Vindex accuses the emperor of tyranny, extravagance, and mismanagement. But more importantly, he calls for another man to replace him. At first, Nero dismisses the rebellion. Provincial uprisings had happened before. Rome usually crushed them easily. But this time something different happens. The rebellion triggers a chain reaction. Across the empire, loyalties begin shifting. Provincial leaders begin reconsidering their allegiance. The Senate grows uneasy. And most dangerously of all, the Praetorian Guard begins questioning its loyalty to Nero. The Praetorian prefect, Nymphidius Sabinus, secretly negotiates with Galba. The Guard is promised rewards if they support the new claimant. In June of 68 AD, the Praetorians abandon Nero. His power collapses almost instantly. The emperor who once commanded Rome's elite bodyguard now has no protection. The Senate moves quickly. Nero is declared a public enemy of the state. In Roman law, this means he is no longer emperor. He is now a criminal who can be captured and executed. Soldiers who once guarded him now begin searching for him, and Nero realizes something terrifying. He has been abandoned. In the middle of the night, Nero flees the imperial palace. There is no army escort, no cheering crowds, just a handful of freedmen and servants. They ride out of the city and take refuge at a rural villa outside Rome, owned by one of Nero's loyal freedmen. The emperor, who once ruled tens of millions, now hides in a modest countryside house, listening for the sound of approaching soldiers. For the first time in his life, Nero is powerless. Reports soon reach the villa. Roman cavalry are coming to capture him. Nero understands what awaits him. Enemies of the state were often executed publicly, beaten, humiliated, sometimes dragged through the streets before death. The emperor who once demanded applause must now decide his own fate, and the end of his story is only moments away. According to ancient accounts, he paces the room. He weeps. He repeats a line that history will never forget. Qualis artifex pereo. What an artist dies in me. The man who believed he was a misunderstood genius does not mourn the loss of his empire. He mourns the loss of his art. Unable to bring himself to act, Nero asks a loyal freedman named Epaphroditus to help. Together they drive a dagger into his throat. On June 9th, 68 AD, Nero dies at age 30. The last emperor of the Julio-Claudian dynasty is gone. Rome erupts into chaos. With Nero dead and no clear successor, the empire plunges into civil war. Within the next year, 4 different men will claim the throne in what becomes known as the Year of the 4 Emperors. But Nero's story does not end quietly. For decades afterward, rumors spread that he never died, that he would return, that the artist emperor still lived. To some Romans, he remains a monster. To others, especially among the lower classes who enjoyed his spectacles, he becomes something closer to a legend. Nero's reign leaves behind a complicated memory. To historians, he is remembered for the Great Fire of Rome, the persecution of Christians, the murder of family and rivals, extravagance and artistic obsession. But he is also remembered as something unusual among Roman rulers. An emperor who did not want to conquer the world. An emperor who wanted the world to watch him perform. An emperor who believed Rome itself was part of his performance.